Great to have you along for the ride. Thanks a lot for stopping by. Glad to have this man on. His name is Ron Vitiello. He is the former acting ICE boss, and that was under President Donald Trump. You might remember Ron because he was in a Senate committee hearing where then Senator Kamala Harris basically compared him and the Border Patrol to the KKK. Ron, it's nice to meet you. Thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
You know, I'm stunned that everybody doesn't have you on because when I saw Kamala Harris go to the border finally on Friday, and by the way, she hadn't been before. We know from the New York Post and from Senator John Cornyn, when she said she went the first time, she went 9 miles away. And she went to some bureau somewhere in El Paso, then jumped on the plane and went to L.A. So she never really went to the border as the border czar. When you were the acting ICE chief, did you have any sort of conversation, any sort of, did you rub elbows with her at all in Washington, D.C., or was this the first time that you met her?
Well, she was on the Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee when I was nominated by President Trump to run ICE as the assistant secretary or the director. So she got her 5 minutes during my confirmation hearing to ask me. And that opportunity for those that are in the Senate that do confirmations is a chance for the Senate to understand what your credentials are,
right,
to vet you for, so to speak, for the position. And so she had her 5 minutes with me, and it wasn't great for her. And it was worse for the men and women of the front line because she intimated that ICE was acting like the KKK,
right,
for the mere dint of doing their job.
And I want to stop you there because I want to play the video. But just to remind those who are watching and listening, the border was an open sieve because of what Biden and Harris did. 94 executive actions to open the border. But when Trump was in, he had it closed the best you could close it. The numbers were completely like the best we've seen in 50, 60 years. On the border, a guy took a picture. A photographer took a picture of, and I don't know if these were ICE agents, CBP. I don't know if they were Texas Rangers. I'm not sure who they were, but there were agents on horseback. And the angle of this picture looked as though, and there was somebody coming in, I believe, from Haiti, and they were stopping him, which is the SOP, standard operating procedure. And the angle of this picture looked like the rain might have hit the guy, but now we know the photographer said immediately, no, they were nowhere near the guy. It's just a bad angle. And there were videos showing they never went anywhere near the guy with the actual rains. What Harris and those on the left were not only intimating, they were saying it, that you guys were whipping black people specifically on the border, bringing back our long history of racism. Now, I want to actually show the video to those who are watching, and I'll let people listening hear the audio of this.
Great.
Well, the Klan was what we would call today a domestic terrorist group.
Why? Why would we call them domestic terrorist group?
Because they tried to use fear and force to change political environment.
And what was the motivation for the use of fear and
It
force?
was based on race and ethnicity.
Right. Are you aware of the perception of many about how the power and the discretion at ICE is being used to enforce the laws? And do you see any parallels?
I do not see any parallels between
I'm talking about perception.
officers and agents.
I'm talking about perception.
I do not see a parallel between what is constitutionally mandated as it relates to enforcing the law.
Are you aware that
protecting
there's a
people's rights.
perception?
I see no
Are you aware that there's a
that
perception?
puts ICE in the same category as the KKK.
I mean, think about that. That was from Chris Cuomo's show back on CNN. It's no longer there, and Chris is now on News Nation. But as I was watching that in real time, Ron, I'm thinking to myself, what the blank is she trying to do here? And what was the only proper answer she wanted from you? Yes, we look like the KKK, and we'll stop being so KKK-ish. What did she want from you, do you think?
Well, it's crazy. She took her 5 minutes to get on her own soapbox to talk about how ICE does their job under the Trump administration, enforcing laws that she had more to do with than the ICE director does,
yes,
right? The ICE director does policy. It does executive actions, right? It enforces the law based on what Congress sends and signs and is signed by the president. So she's trying to make me say that, oh, yeah, us going out and arresting people who have violated the law is somehow akin to being in the KKK. It's completely ridiculous, but it shows you exactly who she is and what she cares about. She cares about her 5 minutes of fame. She cares about performing in front of her constituency, at that time, the entire state of California, which is a basket case.
Yes.
And to say that when Donald Trump runs ICE, there's some kind of racial problem. But now that she's in charge of the executive branch, I haven't heard her say that. I haven't heard her push reforms for ICE downrange while in the executive branch. It's complete nonsense. And then some inside baseball. She didn't go to that hearing. She came in at 30 seconds before her 5 minutes started. No, she was not at the hearing. She came 30 seconds before her 5 minutes started. She asked those questions and tried to blow up the hearing, trying to get me to call the rest of the organization. Just think about the employees that were watching that, right? Their boss is on TV defending his positions and their positions, my credentials, and she calls them racists. And she used her 5 minutes and she walked out right after. So it wasn't about credentials. It wasn't about making things better. It wasn't about anything but her getting on stage and getting a couple of sound bites downrange. It didn't work for her. She went down really badly in the polls because she was a candidate at that moment. And, that might be a coincidence, but I like to think that people saw her for what she was during that 5 minutes.
It's Ron Vitiello. He was the former acting ICE director. That was part of the hearing to confirm you, where the Senate gets to figure out if they're going to say yes or no. And it actually makes me sick. I did not know what you just said. She didn't hear any of the hearing before. She had no information about what you said before. Has no information about what you said afterwards. Yet thought she would take her time to go and confront a white guy about what people were complaining that was some sort of racism at the border, when by then, correct me if I'm wrong here, Ron, by then we knew that the photographer said nobody hit anybody with reins. I think by then we knew that the actual video came out showing there was space between the horses and the people trying to get across the border illegally. And again, they were just doing what they were trained to do. By then she should have known better, but as you say, this was probably just to get some sound bites.
Well, this is a very interesting point because the stuff with the Haitians and the Horse Patrol happened quite a while later. She was vice president by then, but she took the same tactic, right? Here's a lady that was an attorney general. She went to law school and passed the bar in California, at least. So she knows what due process is, and she knows how criminal cases and allegations are formulated. But the Secretary of Homeland Security and the President of the United States, all three lawyers, all three threw those Border Patrol agents under the bus, even after they knew the reporter that took that photograph confirmed that there were no strikes, that there was nobody whipped or hit at all from anybody from the Horse Patrol.
I want to stop you. I want to make sure I understand. So this hearing was before that? And
yes,
she was already calling you guys the Klan?
Correct. The hearing was while going through the nomination process, 2018, 2019, with Donald Trump nominated me to become part of ICE. And so, yeah, she was already on this tact. And let's face it, during the riots in Minnesota, she bailed out rioters and encouraged people to contribute that. She was for defunding ICE before she was for defunding the police, right? She's talked about abolishing ICE for most of the time she's been in the Senate. And when she was a candidate, she talked about decriminalizing illegal entries into the United States. She talked about ending detention centers for people who violate the law by coming into the country illegally or finding themselves deportable. So this is who she is, right? Past behavior indicates what people do in the future. And her past behavior on this issue is complete zero. She doesn't stand behind the workforce. She threw them under the bus twice. She doesn't stand behind the victims in the United States of illegal alien crime that's completely preventable. She doesn't stand behind them. She wanted to defund the police when that was popular. Before that, she wanted to defund or reimagine ICE, whatever that means, while that was popular. She's a complete chameleon on this issue. And her going to the border, frankly, was completely useless to the front line. She talked to a couple of agents on they got good photo ops in front of the wall, walking and talking. That's
she hates the wall. Well, why would she take pictures in front of the wall that she hates? That was Trump's vanity wall.
That's right. That's right. And disregarding what is being told by the front line. Donald Trump was a real advocate for wall. George W. Bush was an advocate for wall. The Congress was an advocate for wall because why? Because agents, career people like me, my previous career in the Border Patrol, asked for that capability, asked for barriers on the border so that those agents can do their job more effectively and safer.
It is Ronald D. Vitiello. You saw him on that video. I'm stunned that was before the actual allegations of whipping happened. So she was ginning this up way before. By the way, go to his website. Go find out what Ron is up to now. It's Ron, Vitiello.com, ronvitiello.com, and go keep up with him. So she goes on Friday as you said, doesn't meet with any front line. She's got a couple of managers there. I don't even know if they were happy to be walking with her. She's actually touching the wall that she hates. That is a vanity wall. Yet she keeps on repeating this line. And Ron, I want you to either dispel this or agree with her if you don't mind. She says that this bipartisan bill would have gotten 1,500 more agents, which would have somehow secured the border. Now, I believe you and I agree that those agents would all just process people faster, get them into the country faster, give them legal temporary status faster, and wouldn't solve anything. But now, somebody who hates the Border Patrol as KKK, they're all a bunch of racists. The person who has said now for about 6-7 years that she doesn't think anybody crossing the border illegally is a criminal. Now she wants to add more Border Patrol agents. What do you make of that?
Well, 1,500 agents, as a former operator, you put more capability on the field, they're going to do better. You give the Border Patrol a challenge, you give them additional resources and capability, they're going to do a great job. 1,500, not so great. In that proposal, the best border bill ever, 650 miles or $650 million for wall, which is an enormous amount of money, Joe. We all know as taxpayers that the government wastes a lot of money. $650 million for wall, that's about 18 miles. So it's not the best border bill ever. It's not as good as Secure Fence Act was. It isn't as good as what Donald Trump was asking for. But, that bill had lots of other flaws as well. It implicated an authority given to the secretary to shut down the border only after 5,000 people every single day for 7 days crossed the border within 24 hours. So 5,000 times 7 days. That's what she was advocating for. That's the best, most, aggressive bill ever.
Right. So we're talking about 35,000 people allowed in illegally. Then they shut it down. Doesn't even say how long they'll shut it down. Then when they reopen it, you can do 7 more days of 5,000 coming in illegally. So again, the Border Patrol agents, as you and I both know, are great people. But if the policies say you can't arrest people or you can't stop them from coming in, you can add 1 million more on the border if they're told not to do anything. It's just 1 million more people who are just changing diapers and processing people. The one bill that would have worked, and I'm sure you probably are very familiar with this, is H.R. 2. H.R. 2 codified everything you were doing and Donald Trump was doing that actually closed the border. It passed the House of Representatives in May of 2023. Nobody's talking about it. They keep acting like this new thing that Langford, like a dork, got behind in the Senate, the Republican. Now, I think he regrets that. But H.R. 2 is sitting on Chuck Schumer's desk even as we speak. Joe Biden can sign it tomorrow. And by the way, they open the border without legislation. You can just undo the executive orders. So this is all a game, isn't it?
It is. H.R. 2 would have solved systemic problems. And it would have, the most important thing it would have done was would it end the incentive of being released in the United States. It would have put us back to immigration reform, if you will, that says if you're a mandatory detention at the border, you claim that you're a U.S. citizen at the port or you cross the border illegally, you're supposed to be detained and not released in the United States. It would have ended that incentive, and the Senate bill did not do that. It allowed for people to come in until a certain number. They would close the border and expel people back to Mexico. That's not a bad, sort of tool to have, but it doesn't end the incentives. It keeps people at the border. It keeps them in the pipeline. More human trafficking, more distracted Border Patrol agents, more cartel fentanyl coming into the United States. It empowers those cartels. It did not solve the problem in a systemic way. Now, it looked at asylum and that, and you mentioned Chuck Schumer, right? H.R. 2, he could put that on the floor. They could run the amendment process, and they could get something that they could get 60 votes out of the Senate to get it on the floor and get a full vote of the Senate, because the House already passed it. The White House already indicated that they won't sign it, so there's a veto right there.
It's on them, but it's on them.
Guess what? Kamala Harris talks about the Senate bill being the most aggressive and that Donald Trump killed it. Chuck Schumer was a no vote on the filibuster for that bill, along with 4 other Democrats. So if it's
you can't make it up, Ron. You can't make it up how nuts these people are. You can't.
Yeah. If Donald Trump is responsible for that bill being killed, then she ought to ring up Chuck Schumer and ask him why he was a no vote on this case, because he voted no. It didn't go on the floor because he was one of 5 Democrats that said no to it.
Wow. It is Ron Vitiello. Go to ronvitiello.com. Vitiello is his last name. Good paisan like me. So as we're watching this unfold and as we go closer to the election, Ron, do you think the electorate is going to buy that she hated the Border Patrol, thought you guys were KKK, said that she would defund it if she could, said nobody who comes here illegally is a criminal? Do you think they're going to buy that suddenly she's tough on the border, Kamala?
Not people that have common sense and are paying attention to what's going on. Not the people of Pennsylvania, not the people of New York, or who watched their police officers get beaten by Venezuelan gang members
Right.
who didn't belong in the United States and weren't here before 3.5 years ago. No, people that are paying attention are not going to vote for Kamala Harris. And even the people that are kind of on the fence, why would you vote for somebody who doesn't care about the American people?
Right.
And she's proven it time and time again. She's against legislation that protects the border. She's against legislation that protects women in sports. She's against legislation that ends the sanctuary city problem. She was against HR 2, right? They signaled from the White House they were going to veto it. So
Yes.
no, she has no credibility on the issue of borders and not much credibility on anything else.
It's Ron Vitiello. Last question, Ron, and thanks for jumping in the seat today. Let's do this again soon. Last question is this. Should Trump win, and I hope to God he does, and he wants to get rid of those who are here illegally, between 11 million and 21 million people, you can't press a button to make that happen. What's the process, as somebody who's been in that business on the border, what's the process to get people who are here illegally out of here?
Well, you have to have the will of the White House and the political leadership all the way down to the career employees who do that work. It's very difficult to do. It will impact cities and towns all over the United States like these criminals do. When those operations start, it's very difficult. So you got to find those people. You got to prioritize. You got to find those people. But more than anything else, you have to have the will of the leadership to stand behind the men and women when they go knocking on those doors, or when they go to job sites and arrest people, or when they go to the parole office, or they go to the county jail to pick those people up to get them on the removal path. So it's not just the president, right? He can do as much as he can do, and he did more than anyone else as it relates to border and immigration security. But the American people are going to have to stand behind the front line, because they're the ones that have to go out there. Those boots on the ground are going to need the support of the American people. So remember how mad we were when we saw tens of thousands of people breaking into the country. Remember how mad we are when we see these victims of illegal alien crime. Yeah. Because when that front line goes out there, they're going to need our support.
RonVitiello.com. Go to his website right now. It is former acting ICE Chief Ron Vitiello. Ron, let's do this again before the election, can we?
It was great to be with you. Yeah, happy to do it.
All right, I appreciate you, brother. We're back after this. Stay right here.